All right, the lady says it's recording. Here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I'm Brian Snyder. Thank you for watching on YouTube and listening on Apple Podcast. If you like this thing, rate, subscribe, and review it. If you don't like it, rate, subscribe, and review it. So I'm really excited. And I didn't even ask you how you wanted to be introduced, and I usually do, and I'm sorry, but I do know some things about you. You're the statewide organizer for the DOnetwork, or the Disability Organizing Network in California. You are an activist. You are the former mayoral candidate for the mayor of Sacramento. That was double mayors. Sorry about that. Is mayoral the correct word?
I think that's correct. Yeah, mayoral candidate. I guess you don't hear that one too often. Gubernatorial candidate is more, yeah, but I guess it
Right.
would be though. Yeah, logically.
I don't know.
Mayoral. Yeah.
And we're going to learn more about you. And I am so sorry I did not ask how you want to be introduced. And I think I even messed up the whole Disability Organizing Network.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I think I mean, I
If
think we met each other in a very relaxed environment originally. So Russell is fine. I mean, I feel like, we spent, gosh, a weekend together. Yeah, out in the.
Well, we spent a couple of them.
Right. Yeah. So, but
I didn't say your name. Russell Rawlings, everybody. Russell
Thank you.
Rawlings. There we go.
Thanks.
And we got caught up in the mayoral thing, but we're back.
Grammar's fun though, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So, how have you been holding up through the pandemic?
Yeah, wow, that is a really good question. It's actually just I'm gonna name drop. Yo Disabled and Proud has a leadership speaker series, and the youth have chosen to ask this question as the opener for their speaker series. So now I kind of feel like I'm on that. But the real answer to that is it depends on the day and the week, maybe even the hours sometimes. It's weird, right? Like I've done a lot of life in these past, gosh, however many months it's been. It feels like 10 years, right? I changed jobs for one. I literally had a transition from Resources for Independent Living, where I was the director of advocacy, to CFILC, California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, where I am the statewide community organizer. So you almost nailed it. There's one extra word there. And that all happened remotely. Like my last week at RIL, and this was a planned transition. So I knew that I had the job, and my current, our executive director, like actually literally negotiated with the executive director at RIL. There was a bit of, we need Russell a little bit longer. So I stayed on, but I did not know that I was going to be literally moving positions without literally moving, because I was in my apartment. I was in a studio apartment at that time. And now I'm in a 3-bedroom house. So again, there's been a lot of life change, and a lot of it, those things that I've just listed, were very positive. There's also been some real challenges. Obviously the pandemic itself has kept me and our house, my household has grown somewhat, with my roommate and her family, and she has children, both of them kind of high risk. The younger is 11, so as you can imagine, that was even a longer period of stress for vaccination. We're now finally completely vaxxed as of last week, the whole household. But then about let's see, I guess it's been Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving Day, my roommate started feeling a little under the weather, and was coughing and having some, kind of significant things that she was really worried about. she lost, I guess I should say also, she lost her mother a year ago.
no.
Almost, to the diagnosis was almost to the day of when her mother found out she had COVID. But anyway, yeah, so that was tough. It was, it's been rough. She's off quarantine on Friday, but she's doing great. She's fine. But it's become extremely challenging. I've had to really test that network of support that I've got. I'm very grateful that I've got a really good set of caregivers that have really stepped up and been willing to work in the situation, because I was really nervous about that. Have been from the beginning. And yeah, I do feel, again, very fortunate based on, the connections and people that I know and kind of resources that I've got. I know not everybody has those. So, there's a lot of that happens in my brain too. It's like, not everybody has this level of preparedness and access. Not that I think these things hit people, and you can't be prepared for dealing with situations like this. But
Let me ask you this: are you considered at risk?
I am, yeah. I have cerebral palsy. I am probably, although they won't say this out loud, probably considered obese as well. I have sleep apnea, so I do have a number of, I think, additional risk factors. But even just the cerebral palsy, most intellectually and developmentally disabled folks are considered high risk.
I did not know you had CP. I had no idea.
Yeah, not everybody does. I don't necessarily present with CP, but it's more of a, I've had people that have CP have actually said that once I told them, they were like, oh yeah. But
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's amazing, the spectrum.
It is. It's really interesting, actually. My diagnosis was, that's a story in and of itself. I was born in West Texas in 1977 and wasn't diagnosed right away. There was a difficult delivery. There were forceps used and probably some resulting damage. But I didn't, I was not diagnosed until I was not walking. And that was really the thing, I think, that encouraged a diagnosis. Now, it's really strange because in looking back, I see that I received at one, initially a diagnosis of Erb's palsy, which I have since investigated, and it makes absolutely zero sense. That is not a palsy that affects 4 limbs, and I clearly have affectation to all 4. So I think I have a mixed type of cerebral palsy, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm amazed at the spectrum, because usually it can go with speech and then mobility and yeah.
Oh yeah, I know people with CP that walk with a limp, and that's really like the only thing that and they technically have a form of cerebral palsy.
Yeah. It's so what was it like growing up? You have no accent, really. What happened?
Yeah, you are not the first person to ask that, and I don't really know.
Because West Texas is a heavy accent, right?
Sometimes.
Really?
Sometimes.
Okay.
And what's funny about that is that I recall, I have childhood memories of and mind you, I've been here in Sacramento for 20 years. So that, I don't know if that affected anything or not, but there were times in my childhood though where I could distinctly remember that certain people I would run across would have like what I would think, I was like, wow, they talk a little strange. But yeah, I don't know. I think I do have a childhood memory though of my my paternal grandfather. My grandfather and his family are ranchers, even my great grandfather. And I did spend a good amount of time with them, and I guess there was definitely a family knowledge of me, you know, kind of poking fun at the way that he said certain words like war for wire and ain't for ant. So I guess I don't know. I don't know if that helps explain my lack of accent, but perhaps I actively kind of avoided trying to sound like that. I don't even know why I would do that as a child, but who knows.
I mean, so what did your parents do? I mean, was your father a rancher as well?
No, he actually got really into he was very into electronics as a kid. And
Texas Instruments?
no, he didn't work at TI. He instead he ended up went to college and actually majored in business, but he got into co-managing a Radio Shack location. But then ultimately, once he kind of got through school and that kind of thing, he ended up working at a company called Schlumberger, which is an oil well services company. They're a direct competitor of Halliburton, but they're not quite involved in the same broad scope of things. They're more, it's really, I mean, basically oil well services company. So they just go out and do the like data logging and engineering pieces of that puzzle. But he was worked as a kind of a tech out in the field for quite a while, and then ultimately ended up in a safety engineering position where he was writing technical manual type documents.
And what did your mother do?
And my mother was a teacher, public school teacher. She taught when I was young. She was in middle school, but she quickly transitioned to, she was high school. When I was young, it was home economics, but she ultimately went into early childhood education. So she was actually working with students in kind of a career-driven field. They were training to basically have childcare skills in like a professional childcare environment.
Did you say the age that you were diagnosed with cerebral palsy?
I don't know it exactly. I think it was around like, again, or probably around 1.5, 2 years old. So
how did your parent? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was really based on the milestones that I wasn't hitting, right? Like I wasn't walking. And that was the kind of, it might have been a little later than that. And probably, I'm probably advancing that a little bit, but yeah, I wasn't walking. So that was, I think, the big sign that something mobility wise was going on.
How did they address it growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to bring them into this conversation, I guess, to completely get a really good mature answer on it. But essentially, I was given, you know, I did have access to rehabilitative services. At the time, it was just, you know, I recall going to rehab. It was like kind of, as a kid, it was almost like kind of like you would approach going to a gym, right? You were taken to this, you know, it was this place, and I always remember it, you know, feeling so different. You know, it wasn't exactly something that I enjoyed as a child because it felt so different than the rest of my life. But there were some cool aspects of it. I've learned that PT stood for like physical torture, and the OTs were occupational therapists were the cool ones, and they let you like play games and do cool stuff that was not like stretching. So that's still like a lot of what that felt like for me. Yeah.
Right. So it felt very, very painful.
I mean, it was, you know, it felt like a chore too, you know, like it felt like this task that was kind of like nobody else does this. Like that's what it felt like to me, even though there were other kids there, like there were totally other kids all around me. But I don't think, you know, and that's definitely part of my story too, I think is that I didn't have a strong disability community connection, and probably in many ways kind of honestly had some pretty severe internalized ableism. Not that I knew what any of that was as a child, but I didn't see peers, right? I didn't have those. And I think it wasn't until junior high that I really started to kind of like notice that like the spaces, especially that it was always the bus, right? The school bus. That was the part where I was like, okay, this is very different than the mainstream kind of experience. Even though once I get off that bus, it's like back to mainstream. So that was I think the one time that I was like, that's, I do know that as a child, it probably had quite a bit of kind of, cognitive effect. And I was like, oh, well, this is just different. But yeah, it wasn't really until probably high school, though, when people started driving. By that time, we were living in Northwest, kind of outside of Houston, about 10, 15 miles outside the city of Houston. But people started driving and I didn't. And the location that my parents actually ended up moving to when we were originally in Houston was slated to go to one high school, and then we were moving and we thought we would be going to the new high school that was opening. That didn't end up happening. I actually stayed behind at the high school that I was already going to. So most of my friends that I had made the year before in junior high actually went to the new high school, and it was a very kind of strange experience, because I was like, wow, I can't even easily go. Like, I had to prearrange all the transportation logistics to even see that. And it was really challenging. I think it was at that point when I started acknowledging that, like, this is going to be tough. And I'll really say honestly, the thing that saved me over and over again was access to online communities. And this was at a time when the internet, they couldn't even decide if it was like capital I internet, if it was capital I, capital N internet. So it was, it was a very different time in terms of what online communities looked like. I mean, I recall a time when
AOL.
AOL definitely, but before that, even when you had to, there was no internet. There was only like the ability, you could connect your computer to another computer via the phone. You would like literally call the other computer. That computer would sit there and just basically its only function was to sit there and receive calls. And if somebody else was already on it, that phone line would be busy. So
it reminds me of the movie War Games. Remember?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you saw that in War Games, actually. They were called bulletin boards,
right.
Or BBSs, bulletin board systems. And then over time, what happened is, even though this was all pre-internet, like 80s, really late 80s, early 90s, those bulletin boards, actually, they did something smart a lot, some of them. They started actually sharing, they created a network amongst themselves. So basically, whenever somebody wasn't on, they would call each other and they would share information. So they would like share email or files. And then you did kind of have a network. So you could be like, oh, so I can now get mail from maybe, say, outside. You even see before, what that situation was like is it was like, yes, you could call another computer, but if that computer wasn't in your area code, you were going to be racking up some long distance charges. And thankfully, long distance charges are gone the way of the dinosaur. But
right.
It's a very, anyway, I think all of that to say that computers and technology were definitely, I think, the thing that kept me probably grounded and socially engaged, and probably have a lot to do with the way that I view the world too. I did have so I didn't really miss out on interaction, but it was a different type of interaction, I guess, if that makes sense.
Let me ask you this, so
Yeah.
people understand. Now, if I remember correctly, CP is not degenerative, correct?
It's not, well, no, it's not. It's actually, it's funny that you asked that, because I think the thing is, CP is not degenerative. Getting older is.
Right.
And the some of the not being, if you're not physically active in certain ways, aging is going to hit you different than it would, So I think I'm starting to feel a little bit of that. But hey.
Now, did you have some type of power chair always, or?
Well, not always, obviously, but when I was, again, fortunate.
I mean, I know you
Um,
didn't come out of the womb in a power
Sure,
chair,
sure,
but
sure. No, in fact, I was recently kind of connecting these dots. Actually, that I was young. I'll be honest. I was probably, I think, I wish my parents were here to verify some of this stuff. Um, I think I was around 5 or 6, honestly, when I first started. Maybe a little older, 6, 7, 7. It couldn't have been 10, but really close. Like right around late, like right before my first decade of life, but not much before, probably. I had got access to a power chair, and I still remember the kind of driving. They put me through driving school at the rehab center. I remember that. And the chair was at the time, and gosh, this must have been like maybe even like 84, 85, maybe even
Back to the
earlier.
Future, ET
Right.
era.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So they didn't make pediatric power chairs. That wasn't a thing. Like they didn't ever think that, at that time, they just weren't making these. So they actually had to build, they built an insert. I remember I had like a chair in
Adult
a chair,
size.
a
Yeah.
chair in a chair. And it was,
It's like a
yeah, it
booster.
was exactly,
Yeah.
except it had like, supports and kind of side supports and straps. And I remember that part. Um, I also remember that it was a belt driven chair. It was my first and last, I think, belt driven chair. I think I had that one up until belt driven was no longer a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I definitely, maybe I had 2 belt driven chairs. Yeah, I guess so. But yeah.
Now, your mobility, if I remember, you have some mobility in one arm a little bit.
I
Like,
have mobility in my arms. I have mobility in all 4 of my limbs, but
mm,
they are, kind of like what I don't know if there's a technical term for this, but CP-ified, kind of gimpy.
mhm,
They are they respond. Gross motor skills I've got pretty good. The fine motor skills maybe not so much.
mhm,
I can't really, like easily pick up, things like with fingers necessarily, but I can kind of force something into my hand and kind of grab it. I hold pens like you would a handlebar on a bike.
mhm,
So I am able to do. I have enough motor skill in my arm to do some writing, but I don't do a lot of it anymore.
mhm.
I've probably lost some of the ability to be easily read when writing. So
Same here. Same here. I can relate. Um, Now let me ask you this. So, I mean, when you started out using computers, there wasn't
yeah,
Dragon, the
right.
software
Oh yeah,
that does voice control on a computer.
yeah.
So what, I mean, it was just, how did that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. And I'm going to go back to the whole degenerative thing. I feel like I definitely had more. I mean, I know I did. I had more function
Mhm,
at the time, and it's probably to my detriment that I don't even try to type a lot. I do a little,
mhm,
but I would type with my thumbs. That's the answer to that question. I was able to type with my thumb, or am able to type with my thumbs. Um, I definitely now kind of favor my left hand pretty aggressively when I'm doing. I'm able to use a trackball. I use a Logitech trackball.
mhm.
I'm probably their best customer and would be supremely sad if they ever stopped making. I was
Right.
really upset actually when they switched to this. Like almost every ergonomic decision that a company makes for ergonomics makes my life harder. Um,
Uh,
their original take on things usually is the best. And
mhm,
trackballs, sadly, like the fact that they used to be just as a giant ball sitting out in the middle of like space was literally the best for me. All the
mhm.
other like this one that looks kind of like an oblong football kind of gets annoying, but
You know what you should do is call them and tell them to make
yeah,
that model and call
man.
it the Russell Rawlings model.
Right. Yeah. I wish that I feel like there's this whole hilarious and it's dumb. And I'm happy to talk about this, how ridiculous this is. The whole like super crip thing, where people are, and I just saw, I actually went to my second, I guess, I like going to live shows, and I went to see Foo Fighters last night here in Sacramento, and
Oh, my wife is going to be so jealous.
it
She's going
was
to be
okay.
so
So
upset.
very, I gotta say this. Don't let her be too upset, because it was a fun show, super high energy.
Mhm.
Dave Grohl, the minute he got up on stage and started like even just talking, I was like, wow. And then he started singing, and I was like, oh yeah, his voice is shot.
Oh, really?
I mean, he clearly has, yeah, but one, you could tell he was definitely not lip syncing, and two, it was just, yeah, he's gonna, I'm worried he's gonna blow his voice out. Anyway, getting back to where I was going with this, though, I wish that being disabled and, not that crip fame should even be a thing, but like I wish that those of us in high, like in these spaces, that we did get like a special access to like Logitech and be like, hey, design this for me. Yeah, no, but that doesn't happen. We don't get our special like Russell Rawlings edition Logitech Trackman marble or whatever.
Right.
It's funny because I actually have a weird, somewhere in this house, probably, or in storage maybe, is a box. Like I encouraged, like my dad, actually, we tried to work on anyway, my dad is good at a lot of electronic things. He's not good at designing boxes. So we didn't really, it was kind of an unfinished project, but yeah. Wasn't as successful as I think we had hoped.
So let's go back and talk a little bit about growing up and experiencing life with a disability. Now, how did you, I mean, the only reason I want to present it this way is because it's the way I kind of like understand it. Now, I grew up, my eyesight was relatively normal, whatever that means, up until a certain point, and then I had to wear glasses, and then and so on.
How early did you figure that out? Because I got glasses late, and anyway.
Say that again.
How early did you realize that
I mean, I think, I feel like I started wearing glasses somewhere around 11 or 12.
Okay.
But I mean, I knew I had some, there was, my hearing loss was early. I had that, but I was functioning, with 20/20 vision for the most part with glasses, pretty for a long, until like basically 2009. I mean, as far as the glasses go, I mean, there were other things, like I had peripheral vision loss and I wasn't able to see well in low lighting. But my point is that the reason I'm bringing this up is it's my disability is degenerative. And so it was a loss, you know what I mean? It was like everything being slowly taken away.
Yeah.
Now, your situation, I mean, we were both born with our disabilities. Mine just presented very slowly. And so did you feel when you were growing up, how did you feel like in relation to others?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like feeling wise, I mean, that's such an abstract word. Feel like, I mean, I didn't really, like, in terms of like other people with disability, I don't really, again, I think it was so late. It wasn't really until I became an adult and honestly living on my own that I really kind of grasped any concept of like, oh, I should, actually like look to build some community with some other disabled people and like see how disabled people live. But yeah,
did you know about, I mean, and I guess in Texas, it would be Center for Independent Living. Did you know about?
Yeah, I did not. It's funny. I think I had maybe 2 seconds of exposure. I was thinking back on this. What I had exposure to was the Department of Rehabilitation, Texas's like equivalent, which was TIRR, I think, and that's Texas. I don't even remember what the acronym stands for, but it's essentially DOR though. It was very vocationally focused, right? It was the department that you go to when you're seeking, like aid and that kind of thing. My parents, of course, again, all mainstreamed. Both of my parents worked middle income jobs. So, I was kind of pushed through that, just that regular system there. The amount of assistance that TIRR gave and that kind of thing was more like, well, here's, a program. Actually, I was signed up for a program at 18. That was analogous to in-home supportive services in Texas. And so my freshman year of college at Texas A&M, I was kind of thrust into independent living without being given the, I wish I had like, you need to go to this, to this place that could help. There wasn't a Center for Independent Living, I don't believe, in like near the university, or there wasn't anything at the university other than a service, like kind of what's analogous to a department for services for students with disabilities type office. But yeah, there wasn't really a lot of support out there. I do think that learning how to manage, I hired a lot of exclusively, actually, they were all other students that were filling my kind of support needs, caregiving needs. So,
so yeah. How did you feel in relation to other students, though? I mean, you mentioned having ableism. I mean, I can relate to that,
Yeah. I was living in an able-bodied world. I mean, I think it's impossible for me to not have ableism. I didn't see peers, right? So when I saw peers, I kind of saw them in the same like lens that I think able-bodied people do. And that was that, that there was just a difference, right? It was always, again, I think back to that time on, school bus trips where there were kids that, I clearly couldn't communicate with. They were nonverbal or other, had a variety of disabilities that I felt I couldn't relate to them, and they didn't really relate to me either. So it was, it was a very different, yeah. And then even at a campus as large as Texas A&M, I came across disabled people so seldomly, and I think we were all kind of in that same general boat when I did, that we were all kind of like figuring it out, but we never, like, it never occurred to me to be like, let me go actively find people and talk about this. But yeah, it just didn't even occur to me.
I avoided, seeking assistance
because I thought that might have been part of it too, but I can't really actively remember doing that either. Other than again, when I was, younger, and there were some kids in junior high, but kids are horrible to each other in junior high anyway. So it was like, I can't really say that I actively avoided it, other than, again, I think that when I was pushed into those spaces where there were, where it was medicalized or kind of rehabilitative, it was not a place I enjoyed. So it was kind of one of those, all right, this is done. I'm back to doing my life. So
do you remember a point at which early on that you felt somebody really included you, that you felt like?
Wow, yeah, that's a good question. Let me think.
Like whether it be a teacher, or it could even be a family member.
I mean, a lot of people did. I was pretty fortunate. It's funny. I think, I wonder if a lot of times, sometimes I think maybe there were opportunities that I didn't explore too, because I started building that, as I was maturing. I feel like I had what was then probably a very odd experience of having a lot of interaction online. And that was not norm, so there weren't like all of these, like now everybody would be like, oh, well, the internet's literally everywhere you look. But at the time that was something you had to actively seek out. So there was no such, like, there was no possibility for anybody to go, oh, you're too addicted to this, or, this could be potentially bad, but, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I recall convincing, friends and others, and well, I don't know that it was all that hard in some cases, but there was a time or two where I went to, started going to, actually that was when I started going to shows. I remember went to a few, not a lot. Again, the transportation logistics were always like the thing to think about, but I remember there were times when, I used to be light enough that folks could help me get in and out of vehicles. And there was like a moment in time where my friends became physically able enough to help me do that. And, but it also meant giving up my power chair. So I tried, I kind of didn't really lean into that a lot, because then I was completely like, I would go in that mode and then I would be completely reliant on them for all of my mobility, because I'd be in a manual chair again. So yeah, I don't know. One time that I was really included. I mean, I feel like I always had pretty good.
It could even be like just a moment, like where where you feel like you didn't have to explain yourself.
Yeah,
somebody understood you.
I mean, that probably didn't really come until, I mean, on that level, it didn't really come until probably I moved away entirely and started being in Sacramento, and really kind of came into connecting with other disabled people. And I'll be honest, I feel like I'm still doing that, right? Like I still I still long for more connection in that way. And I know it's kind of, it's funny, people with disabilities are the largest group of people on the planet, really, but yet, it can feel challenging being raised in these environments where there's just an assumption that it's something negative. And we don't talk about it. So anyway, I guess the complicated thing is to say that even though I work in independent living, it still feels like it would be cool to just hang out. Like, I want to go see one of your shows. Definitely want to catch one of your shows, and I'd love to maybe just say, do you do any open mics in Sac? Have you yet?
By the way, everybody's listening and watching. I recently started doing stand-up comedy again. I did, the first time I did it was in 2004, and then in 2017 I did it. Both times I bombed the first two times, and then the third time was November 5th, and the most recent was December 3rd. And I'm hoping, what I'd like to do is start going down to Sacramento and start doing them. Like, I'd like to do at least once a month at the very least. And so I just have to kind of, what I'd like to do is just get a schedule going, like, either every week or every 2 weeks to, of doing something, because I need to do it more for sure.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad, first of all, I'm really glad that you're enjoying it. I have never done stand-up, but I have connections, and we haven't even started. I guess this is kind of my segue off of the previous topic, but I do have friends in the comedy community here in Sacramento. I did improv for about, 2.5, 3 years.
Really?
At Sacramento Comedy Spot.
I had no idea you did that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yep. That was that was before I ran for mayor. It probably in many ways kind of emboldened me a little. So yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. I had
Yeah.
no idea that you had done performing.
Yeah. And that you know, it's funny. I guess time that I felt included, I guess it was maybe then. Brian Crawl, the then owner, now they've transitioned to nonprofit status. So I guess he's kind of like their executive director or a similar position. That stage at that place has not one ramp, but two. You can enter from stage right and stage left.
That's great.
Literally, and I told Brian, I was like, what? Like, this is amazing. And he's like, oh yeah, we have this comic, I forget his name. Unfortunately, he passed away a number of years ago, and I'm so upset at myself for not knowing this right off the top of my head right now. But I believe his first name was Michael. I'm on 89, 90% sure there. But yeah, anyway, he was pretty well known actually in the Sacramento comedy scene. And apparently he had come in one time and it's like, you know, you need to have the previous location, I guess, that was over here on their first location on Broadway. So small. It's now actually next door to a place called Organized Sacramento that I also spent, the organization that I was pretty well connected to later. Yeah, it's so small that apparently the stage was not really a big deal. But yeah, apparently whenever the new space was being developed, his thing was like, you need to have ramp access. And so it's really great. I think that was one space, you know, it's funny that although I didn't feel, you know, I felt really included. I will say I felt very included. I think for me, more of it was like my own spatial awareness and kind of like being more, I wish I would have been more actualized and still, you know, think maybe if I wish I had more time and just, you know, the pressure of dealing with life in a pandemic wasn't quite so stressful right at this moment. But I do look forward to maybe getting back into it and doing more because I think it's so good to really kind of break down some of the ideas of what you could do with that because improv tends to be very physical. And so it made me think a lot about how to give that same energy with my own performance and work. So
yeah. So you did comedy sports, right?
No, it wasn't comedy sports. Comedy Spot uses a long form, primarily form of improv known as the Herald. That's done by a couple of places. Upright Citizens Brigade in LA is where Brian was trained, and a lot of his stuff comes from there. But yeah, I was took classes in basically long form improv, so not the so much the short game style that you see in like comedy sports or Whose Line or that kind of thing. So
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay,
a lot of, you know, so long form improv is more about setting scene, right? So there's like scene development and that kind of thing. It's almost like a 3-part kind of like play almost, if you're thinking about it that way. So there's a you know, it builds on the ideas as they come through.
Please let me know when you're doing that. Send me.
I will. And now that I've said it out loud, hopefully you'll hold me accountable too, and maybe.
Oh, I will.
Now I'm going to make sure you get down here, and I want to.
Yeah, let me know.
I want to introduce you. I know I'm going to show up, and Brian's going to be like, "You've been away so long," and I'm like, "Well, I had to bring you another Brian. I think I know this. I know this Brian, and he's really cool." So.
Right. Yeah. Please, let's stay connected on this.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I want to go back a little bit. I want to understand when you were growing up, what was there? Did you have like something, a dream, so to say? You know?
Oh yeah, I had dreams, of course.
I can't even speak today. Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, something wrong?
No, I was saying I can't speak today. I don't know what's wrong with me.
It's Wednesday.
It's been a long week. This week has been fucking horrible. I mean,
Oh my God, I'm sorry. to hear
Mondays
that.
are Monday
That's-
was really shitty.
This
That's
is-
all I'm gonna say. I mean, I can't because it's work related. I can't really
Mhm.
talk about it, but it
Yeah.
was so shitty.
I feel
And-
that last week was like that for me. And the week before, actually, this week for some reason has been easier, which I'm grateful for. I mean, for one, I think I'm settling into that kind of like pandemic. Now I know what it's like to share space with someone who's COVID positive. So it's like,
that must have
but,
scared the shit out of you,
you know,
right?
it's terrifying, right? Like
Yeah.
it's literally still just terrifying, and it's almost over, thank goodness. But
Yeah.
we're all doing well. Like the rest of us here, nobody's had any symptoms, so I think we're over the hump. But anyway,
Yeah, and plus
going
that
back
being
to-
that you're all vaccinated, the viral load is probably a lot lower. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're, you know, things are okay. But yeah, so I get hard weeks at work. You said dreams though. Yeah, I mean, my first dream, this is gonna sound sad, but isn't that, I guess this is the tale of like every idealistic boy though, right? Like
Mhm.
I grew up and I thought, you know, I wanted to work at NASA. You know, I was really like set on that. I had a lot of, you know, kind of inspiration on, you know, all of the, I guess, allegedly, I saw Star Wars at, I need to really push my dad on this. I'm going to be like, really? You took like a
1-year-old
baby that was not even one,
right?
to see Star Wars? Like I was born in 77. So like, how is this even quite possible? But anyway, I suppose in West Texas, maybe, but anyway, so that was always part of my, you know, it was very much a part of something I think my father really kind of imparted upon me, even though I don't know that it was necessarily his own dream. It appears, I don't know. But yeah, no, that was always a big part of like what I envisioned myself doing. And I remember how excited I was to be moving to Houston. I was like, oh, it's going to happen. Like, we're going to literally go to Space City and it's going to be like everywhere is NASA and like mission control will be down the street from us, right? Like, not the case. Houston's huge. And anyway, it was very like, I think that was when I started realizing, I was like, maybe this isn't how dreams necessarily work. And anyway, it got more complicated too, because I continued pursuing that. And
what did you want to do? Did you want
to
be an astronaut or what?
I didn't have a specific, I think at first, sure. And then it just became, I'd like to work at NASA, period. Like, because they've got all these other cool jobs too. And I did realize that. But then as I realized I am not phenomenal at math, and engineering's hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was that, I mean, engineering's hard, yes, but I don't know if it was like also living independently is also hard on top of engineering being hard in terms of like getting the education. But yeah, I did not succeed at my academic, original academic endeavor. And that was hard. I also think there was a bit of disappointment too. The first level was, I didn't really go to school. Like Texas A&M was not my first choice. It was my second. I really wanted to be at University of Texas.
Okay.
Which, you know, kind of, I think I don't know, for whatever reason, my parents had a real preference for A&M, even though neither of them went there. Anyway, basically there's like, it's kind of how it goes though. Like my high school is almost completely split between either of those places. Anyway,
so what was your major at Texas A&M?
It was computer engineering.
Okay.
And
that's
that was,
what I thought.
At the time, that was kind of like, I think the degree was only probably less than 4 or 5 years old at that point.
Okay.
So.
Um, so what was dating like?
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah. Um, it wasn't a lot, it wasn't
Mm,
a lot of dating. I didn't do a whole lot of dating in the traditional sense for sure. Um, I think I did a lot more connecting with people again through online,
mm,
and that was there's a whole like sexual maturity that can happen through that.
mm-hmm,
And that's kind of, I think, something that probably I don't even know what that looks like now, but I'm
mm-hmm,
sure it's there. I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I remember, obviously being a young boy. I mean, I'll be honest, I was around mature people.
mm-hmm,
I was connecting with, even when the internet did become kind of more of a, when AOL and, but prior to that, what happened was, and I had access kind of even before you saw like the big push of AOL, but um, it was mostly universities, actually. It was either universities, military, and that was like those were the two big sources of people on the internet. So it was like a bunch of college kids worldwide.
mm-hmm.
And so even at 16, I was corresponding with people at colleges, and things like that. So yeah, there was some of that, there were games and such. So those allowed for social experiences and yeah, but no, I didn't. For whatever reason, I didn't really do a lot of like actual dating until again I moved away from home, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean that by like even that it's 2 years at Texas A&M, a year and a half. Yeah, I didn't do that. I think I was so caught up in trying to do school,
Mm-hmm.
and I did give it an honest try. But yeah, it was stressful.
So what now what so basically the stress of school, did that take you to Sacramento, or how did you end up in Sacramento?
Yeah, well, again, it was that time that I spent online. There was a game known as we're getting really weird internet stuff. So I'm wondering if anybody who ever listens to this will even know what I'm talking about. But there were these games, predecessors to your what they call let me see if I can even get this right. I know the acronym, but massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Is that right?
Okay.
MMORPG. Whew.
Okay.
I don't know because I wasn't, well, okay, anyway, we'll
Is it kind of like
get to
Warcraft
that.
type stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So prior to that, imagine that before computers were technically able to do any of that, there were text-based versions of that.
Okay.
Sorry, I see the pause. I feel like most people are not going to have any idea what I'm talking about.
No,
But
no, no, no. It's interesting because I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I played video games, but I
sure.
was not. It was just a side thing, like an escape,
Yeah,
like. But I wasn't. My drive is theater and
yeah,
performing and things like that. So,
yeah, yeah.
tell me about this. I'm interested. It
So
was a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
text-based
yeah,
version.
yeah. It's they were known as multi-user dungeons. So again, an super awkward acronym, or MUD.
Mm,
And they were back in the day, before you had the World Wide Web. Everything on the internet was text-based, and um, you connected to this computer, and that computer would allow a whole bunch of people to connect to it, and each one, there was actually this, like again, it was before my time, but old computer games, very like the first wave of computer games were text-based. There was a game called Zork, and Zork was this, text adventure. And that's essentially what we're talking about, is something much like that, except that the thing that made them unique is that not only did you play the games, and they were, this was all free too. Nobody paid anything for any of this stuff. So it was all free, and you connected to it, and everybody kind of got their own, like, you could wander around this world. You could talk to people, hundreds of people at once. It was so it was kind of hybrid game chat, type situation. And moreover, you could actually create the world. Like once you got to usually these games you'd have to achieve certain things, and then you were actually able to be kind of like a co-developer, and they grew. And it was really kind of a dynamic, cool environment. And certainly as somebody who, was in kind of computer engineering and software stuff, I was like, oh, wow, this is really neat and it's fun. And yeah, it's amazing. I never thought of that as a career. I never actually thought, oh, wow, this could be a thing. I always just thought, oh, it's a game like everybody else that was on it. Kind of, we didn't really, looking back, it's literally that technology and those ideas that became the inspiration for things like World of Warcraft. So
now, what is it, Fortnite?
I don't even know. Like so here's the thing about gaming as I see it now. First person shooters are not my thing. I can't do games that are like that require reflexes and things like those have no, like Fortnite, I think is it I don't even know. Maybe it's not a first person shooter, but anyway, the games that require that kind of like quick reactive, even probably even WoW now, even World of Warcraft like now is way probably too, it would tire me out. Like I would probably get physically tired pretty quickly. Whereas, now if anything, I do things like strategy games, like Civilization. I really like Civilization.
That game's been around for a long time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember playing the first version of Civilization, and even as a youngster, I think I'm pretty sure I was still in high school at that time. I liked it. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was good.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, and it's like a giant board game.
So how did that bring you to Sacramento?
Yeah. Oh, so the MUD that I was on, which actually is one of the longest, I think it might even still be in existence. I have not been on it in a while, but it was known as Nirvana, and it had no connection to the band, even though everybody accused it of such, and we all laughed at it. But yeah, I met someone there who was kind of experiencing kind of a similar academic and career crisis type situation. And she actually kind of like, quote unquote, dated my roommate at the time. So I wasn't the only one like having these kind of social interactions over the internet. Yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious that they were dating. I don't think they ever actually met in person. But yeah, anyway. So I got to know her, and it turned out that she was, we started talking. She was going to be transitioning away from journalism into graphic design, and shifted. She got out of U of O and went to the Art Institute in Seattle, and I was like, what the hell am I doing with my life? I can't, I'm not going to succeed at being a computer engineer. But I know, some things, there are skills I've picked up. I've got web development, like I know HTML. And I'm like, maybe, this is a thing that people do things with. And so I started saying, I thought to myself, well, this person has graphic design skills. And I've got, I can put things together, HTML. I actually did a year of newspaper in high school too. So I kind of had that kind of like journalistic, I remember enjoying layout almost as much as writing. So the idea of HTML, once I really fully understood its potential, I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool. And so we kind of fashioned ourselves as like a design firm, and this was in like 99, 2000. So it was a very different world then. And she graduated from Art Institute, and her first job was at C.B. Richard Ellis, real estate company, and they moved her to Sacramento. That was where the position was. And so she was here, and we had been talking about, doing this, web development work together. We'd actually worked together on a couple of projects, and we're making a small amounts of money. Yeah, she's like, why don't you, why you're telling me, all these situations at home, right, were really stressful, and just, I felt trapped and isolated. And she's like, why don't you move? It's not like as you're describing other places, maybe. She's like, there are buses and, kind of, she tried to, I think, describe city urban infrastructure to me. And I was like, oh, really? And I it never occurred to me that highly, like cities, inner cities, had, the infrastructure that might make my life easier.
Right.
And yeah, it wasn't until I do not recommend this. I just literally saved up enough money to move. And that's how my independent living journey began.
How did your parents feel about this move?
Yeah, well, my mom cried. She was like, I didn't do the best I wasn't transparent about what I was planning. So, and they could have said no, like they could have literally said, we're not going to get you to the airport. And I probably would have been like, well, how in the hell am I going to get to the airport? Right. But they didn't. They took me to the airport. So, yeah. Yeah, it was hard. I definitely missed them quite a bit at various times. It was very hard. Had no support network. My one friend, and it turned out that she wasn't, both wasn't able to and wasn't really interested in or willing to provide care for me. And looking back, that was really stupid on my part. And I'm just grateful that she didn't just be like, you need to go do something else, somewhere. But instead, she probably to her own mental health detriment, kind of stuck it out, which, yeah, it was tough.
So, how did so you worked doing HTML?
Well, that quickly, the idea of it was really strong, but the reality is that it became really hard to do much of anything. But, living became the priority, and figuring out how in the world that was going to work. The other thing about moving is, if you're on SSI, there's not like a roadmap. There's not like here's how you move. In fact, it's there was a gap in service for sure. Like I didn't have access to IHSS or any of that. Like I had to get all of that started in California. And I still remember the phone call that I had with Social Security. They're like, we can't do a thing for you until you're in California. They're like, once you're in California, call us.
Yeah, and you need a little bit of financial cushion just
right. Yeah, no, and I had none of that. I had zero. Like I literally had paid rent. I had been actually paying rent on the apartment, half my rent, before I was there. But yeah, I had zero. Didn't have like a savings to dip into or anything like that. So yeah, it was tough.
How long did it take to get set up with IHSS and home supportive services?
Set up with IHSS, actually, I think there was some sort of a crisis type thing happening with the program at the time, because I came out here in 2001. It was February of 2001. And I remember, Medi-Cal got, all that almost instantly. And they basically said, okay, we're going to enroll you in IHSS, but they had to do the initial assessment. And at that time, there was a backlog, huge backlog, months long. There weren't enough social workers, and yeah, they were saying that it was going to be, like a month or two before my IHSS started, and I was like, what do I do? And this was, these are again points at which I probably could have leaned into RIL more, but I didn't really know, like I was still so used to kind of just figuring stuff out on my own too. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'm being told no, that I'm gonna have to wait, rather. Not no, but that I'm gonna have to wait this indeterminate amount of time. And I'm just like, this is not gonna work. So I just started showing up at the hospital and being like, I need my care needs met. Like, this is, I need to shower and all these other things. And then they, it's like, we need to expedite something. So they were, they actually took action, but it was tough. So I think it took, once I started really putting pressure, it only took about, I think, another week maybe, after I started really pushing on that, those systems.
So how long were you on your own?
You mean, what do you mean by that?
Without IHSS?
Oh, it was, like
and
I
well,
said,
let's say, like,
it was maybe, let me try to figure, I mean, I really have no way of knowing exactly, because I didn't keep, sad to say, I didn't keep like a journal. But I think it was probably anywhere from like maybe a week. Well, no, it was longer than that. It was probably about 3 weeks to maybe about a month.
Now, your friend was doing, was your caregiver?
Yeah, I mean, she was trying to do the best she could, and completely uncompensated, of course, but yeah.
Was there ever a point where, like, fuck this, I'm gonna go back to Texas?
Oh yeah, sure. There weren't, not early on, because I was stubborn. But yeah, no, it was actually the, I think it was the being told that okay, you can do this, but you're gonna have to wait. Like, I'm like, but I can't wait. Like, my care can't wait. So I was like, all right, well, this, I was like, well, if they're not going to do it this way, then I'll just show up at the hospital and they'll do the care. That was my logic, is I'll just, I'll force this system to provide the care that I need. And it worked-ish. And it also kind of let them to kind of see that, oh gosh, he's going to keep coming unless we get this moved up. So it did, sometimes that kind of advocacy, don't recommend it, but it's a thing that can happen. And sometimes, those are the things naively that if I'd known some better ways to go about some of it, I might have been able to do some of it without that. But
now, was it at this point that you connected with Resource for Independent Living?
Yeah, it was right around in that time that I was, it was kind of like suggested to me, and yeah, I approached it, and I thought I kind of had the idea. I think it might have been that I found DOR. I think I might have found DOR first. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that was the case. But they were the, DOR was the one that made that referral, actually.
So after you got settled in with IHSS, what did you do next?
Gosh. Wish I could say there was a lot of like easy. I tried, to find work. I think I spent a lot of time really depressed. I mean, I know I did. And just kind of lost, right? But you know what? Along the way, I was living. I was like, okay, I'm having to manage. I'm learning to live, learning to know what it feels like to not have like this giant kind of like expectation of where I should be. And And so I think I've spent a lot of time, I'll be honest, I spent a lot of time in that space. And
I'm sorry, you spent a lot of time where?
in that space, in that headspace, right? Of
Right.
just like kind of floundering, honestly. And I think I even went through the whole phase of, well, I'm going to be disabled. You know, this is the way this life is going to go.
That's,
Right.
you're like, this is going to be
this
my
is,
occupation.
this is it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
this is how this works. And actually, I think it was at the point where, you know, I'll be honest, some of what I experienced with RIL and interaction, it was kind of like, is a lot of what I saw around me, you know, like it was a lot of the other folks that I saw coming into RIL were just like at various levels of like extremely desperate. And it wasn't a really like necessarily a super inspiring place always. You know, the executive director, Frances Gracechild, was herself very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like the culture, yeah, I don't know. I think I missed the early days of SILS, if I'm reading the history correctly and understand things. It was a very different thing. And then it kind of became almost like I'm wondering some days if this is something I think about a lot, is has IL shifted too much to being kind of a medical model, like fix problems type of place, and not enough of a let's build things for us and kind of a future that we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway,
For those listening and watching, IL is independent living.
sorry,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah,
we're so used to just saying these acronyms.
I spit them out all the time. I made sure to expand MMORPG, but apparently not IL. So my priorities are intact, right?
Well, you've been working on, I know everybody, he works very hard and he has a very stressful position that
we all do. See, that's the thing I think that people don't.
But you're being pulled all over the state.
Yeah, true. But other than that, it's no different though. All over the state, all over the county, all over, you know, how many counties freed?
Well, we're 7 for
7?
the 7 for the emergency preparedness,
okay.
Disability, disaster, access, and resources. Yeah.
Yep. So you're freed and DAC are the two largest numbers of counties served in the state, and that's just for people that aren't Californian or don't have a concept. That's an unknowable. That is a huge physical area, and I don't even know what the population count would look like, but it's probably also pretty sizable. So that's a huge, you know, so it's not different. I mean, I worked at RIL, so I can, you know, it's the stress pressure and that kind of thing. It's surprisingly not all that different, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it is different, but it's not, gosh, I guess, you know, it's funny. I have to think back sometimes, what was it like working at an ILC when there was no pandemic?
Yeah.
And so anyway, but yeah, no, I didn't do a whole lot of traveling either. And that's actually something that I think
made things easier, right?
It did. Yeah. But even when I did do travel as the director of advocacy, it was always like, we're going to meet downtown somewhere. So anyway, and that's something also that I'd like to like. I wish our ILCs were more able to be filling the spaces of the area that they serve, because some of the areas like Freed, that's massive. And so
and most of it's rural.
I feel the challenge. Oh yeah, very rural. And so anyway, so I don't want to diminish your job is extremely stressful as well, and that actually has direct link to people's well-being. So I
want to ask you this. You mentioned earlier that your time online
helped
formed your worldview. Can you
Yeah,
talk
oh,
about that?
absolutely. Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it allows being online allows you to like actively pursue anything that you're passionate about quickly and to find like-minded people quickly. So I mean, that was good and bad. As a teenager, teenagers are interested in all sorts of things, but I think one of the advantages of having that layer on our society right now is that we can engage with people. It's the future of independent living, I think, and kind of our whole movement is really online. I have to say, and I know that there's this digital divide that exists. Absolutely, it's 100% real. You can't really ask people to spend all their time online if they're struggling to meet like basic needs of like shelter, food, and things like that, which again, I think the independent living centers have been forced to do way above and beyond their means to support the other social safety network that's failing. It's failing all around people.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, we're kind of that, we've become that kind of like support for the support, but it's not, unfortunately, it's not two-sided usually. It's not like those other systems don't come back and then reinvest some of their energy in ILCs, because if they did, it would be a very different, I think the whole thing would be more robust, but
right.
it's
I just want to
very,
clarify for everybody,
yeah.
those that are not familiar, independent living centers or Center for Independent Living are resource centers for older adults and people with disabilities. And they have a wide range of programs which assist those populations. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. So yeah, I think I don't know where I was going now.
No, we were talking about, I wanted to know how the online world informed your worldview.
Yeah. I mean, I probably had a very, I probably had very liberal ideas as opposed to like the environment that I was inhabiting at the time. In Texas, especially, I started to probably gather those, those ideas, things like, the fact that I could email people in Germany, have a discussion about, for example, my fandom of the band Depeche Mode. I was literally talking to a guy like, trading emails and talking about the band. And yeah, it was just, it's just those, I think those little things of like cultural exposure that are impossible to have any other way. And yeah, so I think that was a lot of it. And then of course moving here and kind of being, as I started to kind of peel back the onion and do a lot of self-discovery, really honestly, first of all, identifying as disabled, like in terms of like knowing that the importance of it, and also that there's a community out there. And then secondarily, also identifying as someone who is on disability and also therefore kind of, living in poverty, to be real. That was also another thing that I had to kind of come to terms with, because I was like, I didn't have a cultural knowledge of poverty. None of my family peers or others around me growing up lived in poverty, so I didn't know what that identity was like. I also participated in Occupy Sacramento, and that was again the thing that happened because of online connection. It was because I was on Facebook. At that time when Occupy Wall Street kicked off, I saw the post, to meet in Fremont Park here in Sacramento, and I showed up, and I spent the next year and a half, 2 years almost, in that environment. And yeah, it was that was deeply educational in the sense of like kind of, I think it got me set on really diving into social justice issues in general, and connected to kind of an organizing mentality and skill set.
So immediately when you got settled in, did you start working for resources? Is it resources or resource for independent
Resources,
living?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
plural. Resources for independent
resources.
living.
Yeah.
No, I didn't start working there. I received services, and I was very much a consumer. I didn't even fathom. It took me a lot longer to realize, oh, maybe I should like pursue working here. In fact, it was I kind of slogged my way back into school is what happened. That's what I really did is I went back to school, and I spent a time at City College, taking a lot of like kind of basic general transfer requirements, and figuring out, some things that interested me more. I thought maybe technical writing was going to be something that I was going to pursue. It took me quite a while to figure out that, hey, I've got a knack for, like really being in community with people, and also wanting to build and empower other leaders. So that's been an evolution. It's not been, I've only been working, I started at RIL in July of 2017. But before that, I did do some kind of interning work at RIL. So it wasn't like I had all this mapped out. I didn't go like, oh my gosh, I'm going to build a career in this. I still question. I'm like, well, maybe what's next? Like, what am I? Where is this going to lead me, and what am I doing next? And I really do feel strongly that organizing is important, impactful work, but it is not work that I think. It's not like I don't know that I could be an organizer for 30 years. Like, I don't know that it's healthy either. I think it's good to let leadership, kind of make sure that you're leaving the leadership and movement of things in a more, kind of diverse and healthy way than maybe when you came in. But you're part of a story. You're part of an ongoing evolution and story. And yeah.
So we're getting close to your the time that you wanted to stop. So I kind of want to briefly, overview just where you went. Like, so you were taking classes, and then what happened?
Well, again, life keeps happening. Gosh, I just kept, I kept taking classes. I'll be honest, my second love is the city of San Francisco. Whenever I stopped kind of dreaming of the NASA thing, then it became like I was craving more of this thing, this kind of like liberated, like I craved more of the liberation that I felt when I was in an environment that felt supportive, like that where there was infrastructure. And I was just like, where is this even, better? And I was like, well, obviously it's better in the Bay. And, the other side of that is it's very expensive to live there.
Yeah.
And
especially right now.
Yeah, well, it always, for me, as someone on SSI, it was, just like unattainably, unrealistic. I mean, I could have just dove right into what I was, I was already struggling to make it in SAC. I could have theoretically just made it out that way, and maybe things would have worked out differently. Who knows? But needless to say, I didn't do it. I settled here. And it was at some point that I was like, you know what? Sacramento's not a bad place. And I think it's whenever I really dove into that I was just like, you know what, I really want to get engaged in what makes Sacramento awesome. And I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but yeah, I know you led off with mayoral candidate, and yeah, it was at that point when I think I started realizing I've got all these skills and all the things that I've done to kind of improve my own life and also expand my knowledge of the world around me. I need to give back. I need to start getting some of this needs to go back. And also that other people need this, other people need these experiences. And I think that's really what drives me. That's what inspires me. And so it's why I'm happy to work where I work. And it also, kind of the explanation for the whole mayor thing. I mean, I'll give it really quickly. It was honestly, it was a challenge from a friend that after Occupy was just like, well, what are you doing? What are you going to do next? And this was before the opportunity to RL opened up. But yeah, I was just like, well, I don't know, but we need to change. Like, I was like, we need to change something. We need to, like, the system needs to change. And so the opportunity to, it's kind of like there was a lot going on politically here. Kevin Johnson, we all thought at the time, even whenever we were first talking about it, we weren't really sure what the race was even going to look like. But yeah, whenever I heard, like, whenever we knew that it was going to be like literally two entrenched politicians, Daryl Steinberg and Angelique Ashby, Councilwoman Ashby, yeah, I was just like, this is just the status quo, and it's like alarmingly status quo. Mm-hmm. And nothing's going to be, all the things I cared about, like homelessness and even like early criminal justice issues and things like that. It was just like, this needs some more eyes on it, and it needs to be elevated. And so that was it wasn't, I wish I could say that my campaign was like, I knew that there was probably 0% chance of winning that, but but it was a great opportunity to have debates and be a part of that, and I learned an awful lot.
Didn't you receive a decent number of votes?
I did. Even so, not everybody knows this. I endorsed Steinberg, and I did that, at the suggestion of a friend who had become, pretty good at helping me, kind of develop my organizing skills, but also was really well connected politically. And so, I sat down, I did meet with our mayor, now mayor. And certainly I feel like, he was the better of the choices there that were offered that were not me. But yeah, it's interesting. I think I could have, if my energy had been, if I would have been more connected to everything and been able to keep it pushing, I would love to have kind of kept that accountability going. But yeah, no, I received about, I think, a little over 900 votes. So a lot for someone who had said that they were no longer technically even considering taking the position. But at the time, though, the KCRA debate that we had, the one televised debate that they did have for the race, had me polling at almost 10%. So
now, is that available like on YouTube?
No, sadly, KCRA really tightly controls. If you're listening, KCRA, you should not do this. Tightly controls all that. They've got some clips, I think, and they're hard to, maybe difficult to find, but apparently I believe they are findable though.
Did any of your friends like record it and digitize it? And
they did record it, and it's funny. I went to the Foo Fighters show that I mentioned before we started recording. I went to see the Foo Fighters last night. He has a videotape of it, but it's on VCR tape. I need to ask him if he's still got it. And
Yeah,
two,
have them digitize that,
figure
and
out
then
how we can get it digitized. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we just take it somewhere, but
yeah,
it's
and get it
funny
on
because
YouTube.
yeah, I might do that. Well, I would probably be potentially sued by KCRA because they told us not to do that.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, oh yeah, they were very serious about whenever we had a pre-meeting, all the candidates. We had a pre-meeting and they were like, you know, you don't record any of this on your phone. You know, they own that. It's theirs.
Hmm.
So I mean, I could watch it for my own. I do want to watch it for myself. But yeah, I couldn't probably upload it. But well, if they
Hmm.
did, especially now that we're talking about it here, they'd probably find it and be like, this is copyrighted.
So, you know, there's so much here, and I feel like there's so much more that we can discuss. And
Oh,
I'd like to eventually continue this in another
sure.
conversation. But
Yeah.
let me ask you, where do you think you're going to go from here? Where do you want to go? I mean, you
Ooh.
mentioned improv. Are you?
I see the, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I've got 1,000 things that I think about, you know, like uh I am tinkering around with music too. I don't know. Like, I mean, as far as like where do I want to go? I mean, I'll be honest, I'm happy where I'm at right now. I think now I've got the leisure to actually do things that are not maybe work. Like, I'm hoping that that's the future, is that like some of the life pressure is easing up a little. And yeah, I'd love to get back into improv, but more, I think I'd want to keep that something that I do for fun and for me.
Hmm.
I don't know that I'd want to make it I mean, I don't even think that many people become professional improv people. Um,
Oh, I
I think
remember
it's kind
Drew
of
Carey had a Whose Line. Is it any?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might be reserved for people like Colin Mockery and Drew Carey and Ryan Stiles. Oh my gosh, why can't I remember? I feel like I'm missing somebody, but yeah, I almost named the whole Whose Line cast then. So
But you know, let me ask you these two questions.
yeah.
So if you were able to speak to everyone on Earth, every
Mm-hmm.
living creature on Earth in their own language at the same
Yeah.
time, like an
Okay.
omnipotent being, what would you
Okay.
say?
Whew. Wow. All right. Okay.
The first thing that comes off your head. You know, it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be.
yeah. Well, the very first thing that I thought of
Mhm.
off the top of my head, and maybe it's because you had me thinking so far back to childhood, and we talked a lot about that. One of my favorite, you know, movies. I think the first movie that made me cry was E.T. And Be Good was the thing that popped into my head. We had this goofy set of glasses from Pizza Hut that were the commemorative, like collector edition, stupid ET things,
Mhm.
and one of them said "Be good," and I really, you know, I think that would be what I would want to universally say to every living thing,
Mm. You know,
including, you know, as a reminder to myself too. Like I would want, yeah,
well, it's interesting that you say that because I mean we're basically the same age.
yeah.
And I remember seeing ET as well.
Hmm.
And I remember leaving the theater
Hmm.
sobbing.
Yeah.
I remember just crying because he
Hmm.
left.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
um it's yeah, it's amazing. And I thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you said
So
first thing, and that's kind of my brain just, that's where it went.
now what would your epitaph read?
Oh gosh. Oh, I've never thought about this one. Oh, I, you know, I don't know if I've like actively never thought about that, but yeah, I feel like there have been some times where I've had some kind of health scares. So, um, I guess, you know, I feel like I spend a lot of time thinking about being a late bloomer and like what kind of energy, you know, carry on into the next, I like to believe that there's something after this. So, you know, so long and thanks for all the fish is great. I'm a big Douglas Adams fan. I don't know if you know, but I've got a Douglas Adams tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm.
I'm sorry, what do you have a tattoo?
I have the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the tattoo, the little green man from the cover of the novel.
Okay.
The artistic rendering, the unnamed green guy, is tattooed onto my forearm, and I had the opportunity to go to London back in January of 2019. Yeah. I went to London and I got Don't Panic added around it. So it's, I guess it's now technically an evolving piece. But yeah, I mean, I think my epitaph would be something simple like that. Like, you know, this was a good experience, but I'm ready, you know, whatever's next is going to be equally exciting, I think. And I'm ready to carry on that, you know, whatever that kind of energy of knowing, and hopefully there will be a whole bunch of inspired future people in all these communities that yeah, get that opportunity. Hopefully I get that opportunity to do that, you know, to share that be good message. That's I don't know.
Well, you're doing it right now.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You know, as the statewide organizer for the Disability Organizing Network, you know, thank you for everything that you do. And I've always appreciated your presence and compassion and empathy. And, you know, I thought you were perfect for the position that you're in right now. And I'm grateful that you're there.
Well, likewise, I want to, you know, I do unfortunately have to get going, but I want to say that one of the experiences that I had early on at CFILC, and it was literally months after I started and you transitioned to your new position. The opportunity that you brought to the network by connecting us with and I'm forgetting his name now.
Oh, Captain Paul K. Chappelle. Yeah.
Captain Chappelle was really, really powerful in a way that I've not still fully processed. And I hope that more people like him are out in, you know, kind of in the world doing that kind of work, because I feel like we need to be pushing ourselves in that kind of way. And really honestly, listening to him talk made me reflect a lot on my, you know, we talked a lot about online, you know, kind of experiences and things. And I think if we can keep that grounding of like, we want to do good in the world and be peaceful, then we're going to see great stuff. So I'm optimistic about the future, even though there's a lot of trouble in the world right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, the person that you are, and you know, I think we share like-mindedness, and I'm deeply grateful for everything that you've done and continue to do. And thank you so much for sharing what is alive within you. And let's continue the conversation in the future.
Absolutely. And let's get you down to Sacramento for some open mics.
I'm ready to do stand-up anytime, awesome, man.
Yeah. All right, good.
All right.
Good.
Well, listen,
all right.
Here we are on the Blind Man in Black. My guest, Russell Rawlings. Thank you so much, Russell, for being here. If you like the show, please rate, subscribe, and review. And if you'd like to see my wife and I being exhausting, go to the Exhausting Sniders on TikTok. All right. Thank you, Russell. Now we're going to have our awkward ending.